Mistress dresses up for a secret date with the millionaire, but his pregnant wife shows up instead. A swirl of expensive perfume and the sharp click of stiletto heels set the stage for a night of secrets and sizzling deception. In a dimly lit suite perched atop the city's skyline, a woman smooths her designer dress, rehearsing her seductive smile in the mirror. She is the mistress determined to claim the heart and fortune of a renowned millionaire. But fate has other plans. When the door finally opens, she finds herself face to face, not with her lover, but with his pregnant wife. Betrayals from the past and unimaginable revelations collide in this explosive tale of love, lies, and a fight for everything that matters. The day began like any other for Evelina Kostova. She woke up in her modest but immaculately kept apartment, the faint smell of lavender still lingering from the candle she had blown out the night before. Although the place was modest, it was hers alone. The small living room held plush throw pillows in shades of pastel pink and cream, carefully matched to the curtains that draped the single window. She took pride in presenting herself well, both her home and her appearance, no matter the circumstance. Today, though, had a buzz to it that was anything but ordinary. An unspoken promise hung in the air, one that seemed to shimmer with every breath she took. Evelina had been planning, plotting, and daydreaming for weeks. Today was supposed to be the turning point, the night that would seal her future with the wealthiest man she had ever known, Gregory Harrington. Gregory was a man of power, a real estate magnate whose name floated among the city's elite. His photograph frequently graced the local newspaper's pages, whether he was attending a fundraiser or announcing the launch of another luxurious high-rise. He had made a splash in the business world, with deals that people would label as impossible to land. The entire city whispered about him, speculating on his net worth, who he was dating, or which exotic destination he had flown to. But what the tabloids didn't know was that Gregory Harrington had a lover hidden away from prying eyes. That mistress was Evelina, a woman who had carved her path into his life with a potent combination of charm, ambition, and genuine adoration. From the moment they first locked eyes at an exclusive charity gala, an electric spark had bounded between them. Gregory, struck by Evelina's calm sophistication, wasted no time in learning more about her. She, in turn, was drawn to his assuredness and the aura of command he carried like a tailored suit. Though he exuded a confidence that bordered on arrogance, she felt that behind it lay a man who searched for something real in a world dominated by surface-level relationships. But Gregory came with complications, namely, a wife. Rebecca Harrington was no mere socialite. She was a respected attorney who had built her reputation tirelessly over the years. She was strong-minded and fiercely protective of her husband, and the rumor mill claimed they had a seemingly unbreakable bond. Both Gregory and Rebecca held the city in rapt attention wherever they went, appearing in magazines as the perfect power couple with philanthropic hearts. Yet, no marriage is immune to secrets. Gregory's desire for Evelina had led him into a labyrinth of lies, and now Evelina stood at the threshold of that labyrinth, feeling both excitement and trepidation. Evelina had planned a special evening for Gregory, an intimate meeting at a luxury penthouse suite that overlooked the city's glimmering skyline. All day, she had been preparing herself physically, mentally, and emotionally. She had chosen a black dress that clung to her curves like a second skin, accentuating her slender waist and the subtle sway of her hips. A pair of red-soled heels, a gift from Gregory himself, added the finishing touch. She spent hours on her makeup, ensuring that every stroke of eyeliner, every brush of mascara, and every flick of lipstick was immaculate. By the late afternoon, she had already placed chilled champagne in the suite's mini fridge, along with the strawberries Gregory loved and a small dish of his favorite dark chocolates. She had even picked up a fresh bouquet of gardenias, Rebecca's favorite flower, ironically enough, But Gregory had once confided that he found their scent intoxicating. Everything had to be perfect because she wanted this night to be unforgettable, a stepping stone to a life where she no longer had to watch from the shadows. When the last rays of sunlight filtered through the glass windows, Evelina felt a rush of adrenaline. She took in a deep breath, letting her reflection fill her with confidence. Tonight, after all, was the night. Stepping off the private elevator, Evelina let her gaze sweep across the penthouse suite. The walls were lined with tasteful artwork, and the floors sparkled with pristine marble. She made a final pass, straightening a vase of lilies, just a subtle touch to accentuate the grandeur. The golden glow of the lamps made the suite feel warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, steel and glass environment outside. As dusk merged into evening, the city below sparkled in a million points of light. Evelina breathed in the cool, crisp, air-conditioned atmosphere, reminding herself that soon she would be greeting Gregory with a glass of champagne and an intimate smile. How many times had she fantasized about building a permanent life with him? It was more than just the allure of money or power. She was thoroughly enthralled by him. She had grown to love the man, not just the millionaire. Over the months, Gregory had become her confidant, the one who saw her potential and made her believe in a future she once deemed impossible. But Evelina also knew that Gregory's wife existed like an unmovable mountain in the background of her life. Rebecca Harrington was, in many ways, a formidable figure. She had built a thriving law practice and often took on pro bono cases that tugged at the city's heartstrings, like single mothers fighting for custody or underprivileged youths caught in legal tangles. Rebecca was loved by the public for her dedication and rumored to be Gregory's anchor during his entrepreneurial ventures. Some even said she was the brains behind Gregory's unstoppable empire. Evelina didn't know much about the real dynamics of their marriage, but from what she had gleaned, it was more complicated than a simple love story. Tonight, though, none of that mattered. Gregory had vowed to come alone, telling Evelina he had an important announcement. The sweet thought of him possibly leaving Rebecca so they could be together without secrecy burned in her mind like a constant flame. The very idea of it made her heart pound. Evelina glanced at the suite's clock, 7:45 p.m. He was supposed to arrive any minute now. She refilled the champagne flutes carefully, making sure not to spill. She wanted to greet him with the epitome of poise. With one final survey, Evelina confirmed everything was perfect. The music, the mood, lighting, the chilled champagne, the luscious strawberries. If the evening went to plan, she would soon be celebrating the official start of their journey together. But one can never truly predict the twists of fate. At exactly 8:00 p.m., the elevator pinged in the corridor. Evelina's heart jumped. This was it. She imagined Gregory stepping out in his immaculate suit and tie, perhaps wearing that mischievous grin that always made her knees weak. She hurried to the door, anticipating the telltale jingle of keys, but instead, a brief hush stretched into silence. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was sharp and businesslike. Evelina felt a moment of confusion. Gregory never knocked. He had a key. Quickly, she smoothed her dress, steadied her breathing, and opened the door. On the other side stood Rebecca Harrington, resplendent yet visibly pregnant, her fitted designer coat leaving no doubt of the life growing inside her. Evelina's breath seized. She recognized that face from countless magazine covers and society columns. At this close proximity, Rebecca radiated a commanding presence. Shock thundered through Evelina's veins, turning her muscles rigid. She froze like a deer in headlights. Without waiting for an invitation, Rebecca strode in, her posture emanating control. She surveyed the lavish suite for 1 second, eyes darting from the champagne to the half-drawn curtains. from the low table set with strawberries to the flickering candle near the sofa. Finally, her gaze flickered to Evelina with an expression that combined cold anger with a trace of heartbreak. Before Evelina could speak, Rebecca tossed a small silver key onto the marble table. "He gave me this," she said calmly, her voice soft yet filled with quiet steel. "He left it in the car. I found it when I started driving. He said he was working late, but I knew better." Evelina's world spun. For months, she had imagined meeting Rebecca under countless scenarios, most of them far less gracious. But no fantasy she had conjured could match the shock of this real encounter. Why are you here?" She finally managed, her voice cracking. Rebecca exhaled, her eyes flickering to the clock. "Because he's been lying to both of us, and I'm not going to let that continue." In a daze, Evelina motioned for Rebecca to sit, even though fear and guilt roared in her mind. If she had any illusions of a peaceful transition or Gregory effortlessly walking away from his marriage, those illusions were quickly vanishing. She wrestled with her panic, aware that every second stretched taut with unspoken tension. For a moment, she considered demanding that Rebecca leave, but logic held her back. She needed to figure out what this meant for her future, for Gregory, for this unborn child. Unsure of what to do, Evelina closed the door, sealing herself in this unexpected confrontation. The city lights below sparkled, but inside the penthouse, a storm had begun brewing, one that threatened to upend everything she had meticulously planned. Trembling inside, Evelina offered Rebecca a seat on the plush sofa. The heavily pregnant wife sank into it carefully, maintaining her composure in a way that reminded Evelina of a queen seated on her throne. Rebecca's coat slipped open, revealing the outline of her round belly. For a moment, Evelina's eyes lingered on the physical evidence of Gregory's long-term bond with Rebecca, something Evelina had, until now, mostly chosen to ignore. The tension was palpable, suffocating even. Evelina perched on the edge of a nearby chair. She wondered whether to speak first or wait for Rebecca to break the silence. Rebecca gently placed a hand on her belly, almost protectively, and eyed the table with the champagne. Slowly, she picked up one of the glasses and studied it, swirling the champagne as though it might hold answers to her predicament. Then she raised her gaze to Evelina. "I'm sure you know who I am," Rebecca said, her tone clipped but measured. "Rebecca Harrington." Evelina nodded, her throat painfully tight. "I do." Rebecca's lips pressed together, forming a thin line of disapproval. Yet there was a sorrowful curve to them, to betrayal and heartbreak overshadowing her usual confident glow. "How long have you been seeing my husband?" Evelina found it hard to maintain eye contact, but she forced herself to reply with as much dignity as she could muster. "About a year." A flicker of pain crossed Rebecca's face. She drew in a sharp breath before continuing. "A year? And during that time, you must have known he was married." Evelina swallowed. She wasn't proud of herself, but she refused to lie in this moment. "Yes, I knew." Rebecca closed her eyes for a moment, as though absorbing a blow. "So, you've prepared all of this?" "The champagne, the dress," she paused, glancing at Evelina's figure. "For him, for tonight." The weight of Rebecca's stare made Evelina's cheeks burn. "Yes," she admitted, her voice a whisper. She wanted to add that Gregory had promised her a future, that he said things would change, but it felt hollow and self-serving in front of his pregnant wife. Rebecca put down the champagne flute. "He's not coming," she said flatly. "Not tonight." In that single statement, any illusions Evelina had harbored about a romantic evening with Gregory collapsed. Confusion, anger, and heartbreak surfaced in her chest. She should have known something was amiss the moment she saw Rebecca's face. The fear of losing Gregory forever suddenly seemed more real than any fantasy about becoming his partner. "Why are you here instead?" Evelina asked, attempting to steady her voice. Rebecca exhaled slowly. Because I want answers. Gregory might be too much of a coward to face me with the truth, but I'm not going to bring a child into this marriage with a blindfold on. I found the key to this suite in the console of our car, where he carelessly tossed it. He said he had a late meeting and needed to take a different car. I knew he was lying. I followed him, but halfway through, he must have realized and took a different route. He never came to you. Instead, he went somewhere else. I had this key, and I decided to see what I'd find. And here you are. Evelina flinched at the mention of Gregory's deception. Had he played them both for fools, ensuring neither would track him to the other? Now, Gregory was off somewhere else entirely, leaving his pregnant wife and his mistress to confront each other in a penthouse suite meant for a secret rendezvous. The two women sat in stilted silence for a moment, each one trying to measure the other. Evelina found herself unsure of how to navigate this precarious exchange. She was torn between defending her actions and wanting to flee in shame. But curiosity gnawed at her. If Gregory wasn't here, then where could he be? Evelina ventured a question, her voice trembling. "Do you think he's with someone else?" Rebecca's expression turned grim, and for a moment Evelina glimpsed raw vulnerability beneath her steely facade. "I have no idea anymore," Rebecca admitted, her tone hollow. "I never believed Gregory would stoop this low. A few months ago, I noticed subtle changes in him. He'd come home later, miss dinners without explanation. I attributed it to stress or new business deals. But the evidence became undeniable, a strange receipt in his jacket pocket, an odd phone call he hung up on as soon as I entered the room. I confronted him, and he brushed me off, saying I was imagining things because I was pregnant and hormonal. Then I saw your name on his phone, and the puzzle pieces finally started fitting together." Evelina's face blanched. This entire time, she had seen Gregory's distance as a sign he was preparing to leave Rebecca. But evidently, he had been weaving a tapestry of lies, telling Evelina he was working on the divorce while telling Rebecca something else entirely. The sense of betrayal sank deeper into Evelina's heart, mingling with the guilt of her own complicity. Does he love you?" Evelina asked, immediately feeling foolish for posing such a question to a pregnant wife. But she couldn't hold back. She needed to understand the nature of their marriage. A wan smile crossed Rebecca's face. "He used to, or at least he used to act like it. We've had our rough patches, but we've also shared our fairy tale moments. I thought we were building a life together, especially now that I'm pregnant." She placed a palm protectively on her belly. "I thought we were strong. Maybe I was naive." Silence stretched between them again, a pregnant hush loaded with heartbreak and the question of what to do next. The city lights glittered below, oblivious to the emotional chaos in the penthouse. Evelina could almost feel her meticulously constructed world shattering, all her dreams of stepping out of the shadows with Gregory's hand in hers gone in an instant. A wave of dizziness overcame Evelina. She rose to her feet and walked to the glass wall that overlooked the city. Rebecca remained on the sofa, her gaze following Evelina's every move. Evelina couldn't meet Rebecca's eyes right now. She needed a moment of clarity, even if all she found was more confusion. Behind her, Rebecca's voice came quietly. "I'm not here to fight you. I came here for truth. Tell me, Evelina, what has Gregory promised you?" Evelina let out a heavy breath. "He said he'd divorce you," she confessed, her voice trembling. "He said it was only a matter of time, that your marriage had been dying for years, and that the baby was just an accident. He told me it wouldn't change anything between us. He said once the paperwork was sorted, we'd be free to live together." Rebecca listened calmly, though her knuckles tightened around the edge of the couch. "An accident," she repeated bitterly. "I was under the impression we were planning a family. Shows how little I really knew." Evelina turned around to see tears brimming in Rebecca's eyes. This woman, this accomplished lawyer, this philanthropic social figure looked heartbreakingly human right now. And that was the moment Evelina truly grasped the depth of the deception they both faced. It wasn't just about a man cheating, it was about an entire future he had dangled in front of two different women, playing them like chess pieces in a match. Only he was destined to win. A trickle of shame seared through Evelina's core. She had allowed herself to believe in Gregory's illusions without fully questioning the reality. She had blinded herself to the complexities of his marriage, to the fact that he was bringing a child into this world. Now she was face to face with the unsuspecting mother of that child, seeing how her own actions had contributed to this heartbreak. Rebecca composed herself, wiping away a single tear before it could fully roll down her cheek. "I don't want to cause a scene or do anything reckless," she said, her voice regaining some of its earlier strength. "But I also refuse to let him continue lying to me. I suggest we call him, right now, together." Evelina hesitated. The idea of calling Gregory, potentially catching him in another lie, or forcing him to confront them both, was terrifying. But she also recognized the inevitability of it. "Fine," she said finally. Rebecca pulled out her phone, the latest model with a sleek gold case. She tapped Gregory's number and turned on the speaker. The phone rang and rang. They waited, tension coiling in the silence. At last, Gregory's voice came on, deep and smooth, though bearing a tinge of annoyance. "What is it, Rebecca?" he answered. I'm busy right now." Rebecca's gaze locked with Evelina's, and she spoke clearly. "Busy doing what, Gregory?" He paused for a fraction of a second. "I told you I had a late meeting with a client. If this is about dinner, I'll be home when I'm done. Is there something you need?" Rebecca inhaled, her voice hardening. "I'm at the penthouse suite, the one you rented for your so-called business trip last week. Care to explain why your mistress is here waiting for you?" The line went deathly quiet. Evelina felt her heart pounding so loud she was sure Rebecca could hear it. Finally, Gregory spoke, his voice sharper. "Rebecca, what are you talking about? You shouldn't be there." Rebecca snorted in disbelief. "Apparently not. But I am, and I'm looking right at Evelina Kostova, the woman you've been stringing along for over a year." Gregory's tone escalated. "Rebecca, calm down. We can talk about this." But before he could finish, Rebecca ended the call. The abrupt click echoed in the penthouse, as final as a judge's gavel in a courtroom. A cloud of tension lingered in the suite, thick enough to cut with a knife. Rebecca stared at her phone, lips pursed. Evelina's arms crossed over her chest, as if trying to contain the roiling emotions inside her. A part of her wanted to call Gregory herself, to demand an explanation, but a bigger part of her suspected it would be pointless. "Do you think he's rushing here now?" Evelina asked uncertainly. Rebecca set her phone on the table with calm deliberation. "Honestly, I don't know. Knowing Gregory, he might try to salvage this situation by lying yet again. Or he might hide until he can craft some story. Either way, I'm not leaving until he shows his face." The clock ticked ominously. Evelina felt the overwhelming need to unburden her chest, to voice her regrets, her heartbreak, her confusion. Yet she hesitated. How do you share your pain with the woman whose life you have, in part, broken? At length, Evelina found enough courage to speak. "I didn't get into this to hurt you," she murmured. "I believed him when he said your relationship was over, that you'd only stayed together for appearances. I thought he was telling me the truth." Rebecca sighed, leaning back against the plush sofa. "I want to be furious at you," she admitted, "and a part of me is. But I also know Gregory's persuasive power. He's had me wrapped around his finger for years. I can't entirely blame someone else for falling under the same spell." Evelina's eyes welled with tears. The complexity of the situation weighed on her like an anchor, and she felt more regret than she ever had in her life. "I never meant for it to go this far. But after a while, I fell in love with him, really in love. He made me believe he was just a breath away from walking away from everything that tied him to his past. And that past was me, Rebecca said, a note of bitterness in her voice. She wrapped her arms protectively around her belly again. I won't pretend our marriage was flawless. We had issues. Maybe Gregory saw in you something new, an escape from the pressures of our marriage. That doesn't excuse what he did. What we all did. Evelina nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I want you to know, if I had known how devoted you were to him, if I had understood that the baby wasn't an accident, maybe I would have made a different choice. Or maybe I should have confronted you from the beginning. Rebecca offered a tight, wan smile. We can't change the past, only how we deal with the fallout. She turned her gaze toward the window, and now there's a new life caught in the middle of all these deceptions. For a long moment, both women let the stillness of the room envelop them. The penthouse, once prepared for a night of sensual delight, had become a theater for heartbreak and disillusionment. Neither woman knew what the future held, but they both suspected it would be drastically different from what they had envisioned hours earlier. To break the suffocating silence, Evelina moved to the kitchenette. She poured 2 glasses of water and brought one to Rebecca. The pregnant wife hesitated, but eventually accepted the gesture with a nod of thanks. For a moment, they sipped in quiet companionship, each lost in her own swirling thoughts. Rebecca studied the swirling patterns of the marble floor as if they might reveal some hidden secret. Eventually, she spoke again. I'm trying to recall every moment in the past year, every smile Gregory gave me, every time he said he loved me, and figure out if it was real or just part of his script. I keep wondering if I missed some obvious sign. Evelina sank into a chair, a wave of empathy washing over her. I've been doing the same thing, except from the other side, wondering if every promise he made me was a lie, or if there was ever a shred of truth in any of it. Their eyes met, and in the reflection, both saw the same grief, the same sense of betrayal. 2 women, supposedly rivals, but now both victims of a man's tangled web of deceit. Evelina's voice quivered as she found the strength to ask, "Will you leave him?" Rebecca inhaled, her emotions swirling. "I don't know," she admitted. "A part of me wants to throw him out of our home. Another part of me worries about our child. Then there's the logical side of me wondering about the legal battle, the financial ramifications, the paparazzi that would swarm us. And what if Gregory tries to claim custody or partial custody one day? Should I endure this for the sake of my child? Or is that the worst message I could possibly send about love and respect?" Evelina nodded, her heart pounding. I was willing to do anything for him. If I had found out he was lying to me like this, I would have ended it. But he always knew how to reel me back in. I don't have a child to consider, though. I can't even imagine. Rebecca's gaze softened. If it wasn't you, it might have been someone else. Gregory is a charming man. He always has been. When we first started dating, I remember how he'd whisk me away to exclusive dinners and exotic trips. He always had this knack for making me feel special, like the center of his universe. But somewhere along the line, we lost that sparkle. I was working on a big case. He was expanding his empire. We just drifted. Evelina listened, feeling a pang of recognition. Gregory had shown her that same intense attention, as though she was his only priority. He made me feel like I was the key to his happiness, she confessed. He'd say things like, "You're my escape from all the noise of my life. With you, I can just breathe." And I believed him. Rebecca sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "It's the same script, different cast," she said sadly. "I can't believe how gullible I've been. Even as a lawyer, someone trained to spot falsehoods, I let my guard down when it came to my husband." A tear slipped down Evelina's cheek. She wiped it hastily, remembering the countless times she'd waited for Gregory in secret hotel rooms, the many nights she cried into her pillow because he'd cancelled at the last minute. She had given him her entire heart, only to discover she was just another link in his chain of deceit. The sweet silence was broken by the distinctive ding of the elevator door in the corridor outside. Both women froze, their hearts pounded in unison. Had Gregory finally come to face them? A moment later, the door swung open, but it wasn't Gregory standing there. Instead, a tall, well-dressed man with slicked-back hair stepped inside, startled to see two women instead of the single female companion he expected. With a swift glance around the penthouse, he cleared his throat awkwardly. "Excuse me," he began, his voice cultured and low. "I'm looking for Evelina Kostova. I have a message for her from Mr. Harrington." Evelina, frowning, stood up. "I'm Evelina. Who are you?" He straightened his expensive suit jacket and replied politely, "My name is Roland York. I'm an associate of Mr. Harrington's. He sent me here to deliver this." He held out a sealed envelope. Alarm bells went off in Evelina's head. Why wouldn't Gregory deliver this message himself? She approached Roland cautiously and accepted the envelope. She tore it open to find a handwritten note. "Evelina, I'm sorry. Things got complicated. I need some time to figure this out. Please don't believe everything Rebecca tells you. She's not as innocent as she seems. I'll be in touch soon. In the meantime, this penthouse is paid for through the weekend. You can stay if you wish." Gregory Evelina stared at the note, her heart sinking. She handed the note to Rebecca without hesitation. Rebecca read it, her face twisting with anger. "Unbelievable," Rebecca muttered. She turned to Roland, arms crossed over her belly in a protective stance. "Where is he?" Roland glanced at Rebecca with mild surprise, only now noticing her pregnancy. He didn't provide his exact location, Mrs. Harrington. "Only asked that I deliver the envelope and confirm that Miss Kostova received it." Evelina felt her legs tremble. It was as if Gregory couldn't face the damage he had wrought. Instead, he was sending an envoy to manage the fallout. She wanted to scream, cry, or throw something. But she held herself in check, more for her own dignity than for Gregory's sake. "Well, you've delivered the message," Rebecca snapped. "Now you can go." Roland looked uncomfortable, but he nodded and retreated out the door. The echo of his footsteps in the corridor was soon swallowed by the hum of the elevator. When they were alone again, Evelina and Rebecca reread the note in silence. Evelina's face burned with a mixture of shame and fury. It was so typical of Gregory dodging confrontation to maintain control from a distance. The message contained manipulative words aimed at both of them, an apology for Evelina and a dig at Rebecca's credibility. Evelina sank onto the sofa, her body trembling. She massaged her temples as if to ward off an oncoming headache. "He says he needs time. That's exactly what he told me a month ago when I asked him to finalize things with you." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "And his jab at me, implying I'm not innocent. He's just trying to sow discord, trying to make me look like the villain so he can rescue you from the wicked wife." They exchanged a knowing look, both aware of how Gregory's manipulations worked. Evelina pressed her palms against her eyes. "I don't know how I got involved in this. I mean, I know I made my choices, but it feels like I've been living in a bubble of illusions." Rebecca's voice softened. "You're not the only one. In some ways, I'm just as guilty for not seeing the signs earlier or for choosing to ignore them because it was easier than confronting the reality of a failing marriage." The weight of Gregory's betrayal pressed down on them like a leaden blanket, but strangely, a fragile camaraderie was taking root between them. They had uncovered something that connected them: pain, heartbreak, and a sense of disillusionment, so profound it was changing their identities. In the harsh fluorescent light of Gregory's penthouse suite, mistress and wife were no longer pinned against each other. In a cliché drama, they were two wounded individuals seeking truth and closure. Rebecca pulled her phone from her purse and texted Gregory rapidly. Evelina's eyes flickered to the device. "What did you say?" "I told him I want a face-to-face meeting within 24 hours, Rebecca replied, her tone as cold as steel. "This can't drag on. The press is already nosing around my pregnancy, and if this scandal leaks out, it could destroy everything, my reputation, his business, the entire life we've built." Evelina swallowed, feeling a pang of empathy. For all her fantasies about a glamorous life with Gregory, she'd given little thought to the public chaos that would ensue. She'd never had to manage a high-profile career or a public image. What if he refuses? Rebecca clenched her phone. "I'll make sure he doesn't. If he thinks hiding will help, he's dead wrong. I'm done letting him run from his responsibilities." Evelina nodded in agreement. There was a time she would have done anything to protect Gregory, to shield him from scandal. But not anymore. She had sacrificed her self-respect on the altar of his promises for far too long. As the night deepened, Evelina and Rebecca found themselves in a state of uneasy cohabitation. They shared a few awkward moments. Evelina offered Rebecca a meal, which she politely declined. Rebecca, exhausted, tried to stretch her legs, but the penthouse sofa wasn't the most comfortable for a pregnant woman. Shortly after midnight, Rebecca's phone buzzed. She snatched it up, seeing Gregory's number on the screen. Evelina rushed to her side, silently pleading for some resolution. On speakerphone, Gregory's tense voice filled the silence. "Rebecca, are you still with her?" "Yes," Rebecca replied curtly, "and we're waiting for an explanation." Gregory sighed heavily on the other end. "I can't talk about this right now. Please, just go home. I'll come see you first thing in the morning." Rebecca's lips curled in anger. "You want me to wait for you to show up and feed me more lies? Do you think I'm that naive?" "It's not like that," Gregory insisted. "There are things you both need to know. But it's complicated. Trust me, I'm trying to fix this." Evelina couldn't contain herself any longer. She leaned in. "Gregory, if you ever cared about me, about us, you'll face us. Now." A tense silence ensued. When Gregory finally spoke, his voice dropped to a near whisper. "Fine, give me an hour." He ended the call, leaving Rebecca and Evelina exchanging wary glances. An hour from now, the man who had stolen both their hearts and shattered them was set to arrive. Neither knew what to expect. Would he offer a single, coherent explanation? Would he try to pit them against each other? Or would he spin more elaborate lies? "This ends tonight," Rebecca said, steeling herself. Evelina nodded, her pulse racing. If Gregory thought he could manipulate them further, he was in for a shock. The hour stretched like an eternity. Rebecca sat at the marble bar, occasionally sipping water to stay hydrated, while Evelina paced the floor, too anxious to remain still. At last, close to 1 a.m., the elevator chimed in the hallway. Moments later, Gregory Harrington stepped through the door. He looked disheveled, hair askew, tie loosened, the tension clear in his eyes. This was a far cry from the polished, self-assured millionaire who normally graced magazine covers. For a split second, Evelina felt a flicker of pity. Then she remembered the night she had cried, the tension in her chest, the guilt weighing her soul. Beside her, Rebecca drew herself upright, bracing for battle. Gregory shut the door behind him, letting his gaze dart between the two women. "Rebecca." "Evelina," he said, forcing a weak smile that neither returned. Rebecca's fist clenched. "Save the niceties. We want answers." Gregory swallowed, placing his hands in his pockets, a gesture Evelina recognized as one he used when feeling cornered. "I know I've made mistakes." "Mistakes?" Rebecca interrupted, incredulity heavy in her tone. "We have a life together. We have a child on the way. And you've been sneaking around with Evelina, feeding her lies about divorcing me. We deserve more than a vague apology. Gregory's eyes flicked to Evelina, silently pleading for sympathy. Evelina stepped forward. Gregory, you said we'd have a future. You told me your marriage was over, that you were just staying together for the baby. Now, Rebecca says that's not true, that this pregnancy was planned. He sighed, raking a hand through his hair. It started that way. We talked about having a baby, yes, but then we grew apart and I didn't know how to fix it. I felt suffocated, and then I met you, Evelina. You reminded me what it felt like to be alive again, to be desired. Rebecca slammed her hand against the bar, stopping him mid-sentence. And what about me? Am I just a convenient fixture, someone to warm the bed at home while you chase other women? Gregory's face twisted with pain. No, never. I love you, Rebecca. It's just that everything got out of control. I was juggling my business, your pregnancy, our drifting relationship, and I turned to Evelina as an escape. But I had no idea it would go this far. Evelina felt her chest tighten. You promised me a life together. You said you were leaving Rebecca. Were you lying the whole time? He hesitated. I planned on leaving at first, but every time I thought about actually walking away, I couldn't do it. I realized I still cared for Rebecca. And then the news that she was pregnant, it changed everything. I tried to break things off, but you looked at me with such hope, Evelina. I didn't want to hurt you either. His words were a whirlwind of half-confessions. He had loved them both, or claimed to. He had deceived them both. That much was obvious. Rebecca advanced. Her eyes narrowed. You don't get to play the victim here. You used Evelina. And you used me. You're about to become a father, and this is how you handle responsibility. Gregory's shoulders slumped. I'm sorry. I know I'm to blame, but at least let me explain. Our marriage, Rebecca, it wasn't perfect, and you know that. I felt like we were turning into business partners rather than husband and wife. With Evelina, I felt passion again. I needed that. But I also realized you and I still have a bond. Especially now that we're about to be parents. Evelina's nails bit into her palms. So, what are you saying? That I was just a fling to revitalize your spark? And now you plan to stay with Rebecca? Gregory's gaze flickered with uncertainty. I don't know. That's the truth. I'm torn. I care for you both, but I can't keep living like this. Rebecca's voice trembled with rage. We'll make that choice for you, Gregory. I refuse to stand by and let you waltz between us. If you want to salvage this marriage, you're going to end things with Evelina and commit. Otherwise, you can pack your bags and go, but you'll still be financially responsible for our child. A tear spilled down Evelina's cheek. And what about me, Gregory? Are you going to stand here and just abandon me after everything we've shared? He turned to her, agony etched on his features. I don't want to abandon you, but what can I do? If I choose you, I lose my child. If I choose Rebecca, I lose you. Rebecca's eyes blazed. There's no middle ground. You can't have your mistress and your wife under the same roof. That's not how marriage works. A heavy silence descended. Gregory looked from Rebecca to Evelina, desperation clouding his eyes. I need time. Rebecca let out a bitter laugh. Time for what? So you can continue hiding from reality. No, Gregory. Either commit to our family or walk away. Decide right now. Evelina's heart hammered. Part of her wanted to plead for more time, to talk to Gregory privately and remind him of the tender moments they'd shared. But a larger part of her knew that was just feeding the lies. Even if he chose her, she would be the woman who had broken a family, overshadowing everything with guilt and scandal. Gregory inhaled sharply. Rebecca, you're my wife. You've stood by me for years. You're carrying my child. I can't walk away from that. He turned to Evelina, eyes brimming with regret. Evelina, I'm sorry. I love you, but I can't abandon my child. I hope you can understand. Evelina felt as though the ground had collapsed beneath her. Her worst fear had materialized. Gregory was choosing Rebecca and the baby over her. The heartbreak coursed through her like a physical blow. She wanted to scream at him, to remind him of the months they'd spent building plans for a future that would never materialize now. But words failed her. She simply stared at Gregory, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. He reached out a hand, as though to offer comfort, but Rebecca blocked him, stepping between them. "You've made your decision," Rebecca said, her voice resolute. "You'll come home with me tonight, and in the morning we'll discuss how we move forward. But as far as I'm concerned, if you ever cheat on me again, I won't just divorce you, I'll ruin you in court." Gregory winced but nodded. Understood. Evelina sank onto the sofa, numb. She felt the devastating weight of betrayal and heartbreak, but also a strange sense of finality. This wasn't how she'd imagined things ending, yet some part of her was almost relieved. The mask had finally fallen. For too long, she had occupied a world of illusions. Now, the truth was laid bare. Rebecca turned to Evelina, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know this hurts, but it's best we end this now." Evelina sniffled, clutching the cushion for support. "You have nothing to apologize for," she managed to say. "I'm the one who—" Rebecca shook her head. "We're both victims. I truly hope you find happiness someday that isn't built on secrets." Trembling, Evelina nodded. She cast one final glance at Gregory, who hovered near the door, guilt racking his features. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. A hush stretched across the penthouse suite, until, finally, Gregory cleared his throat. "Let's go," he said to Rebecca, opening the door. Rebecca moved past him. Just before crossing the threshold, she turned back to Evelina with a look that was part sympathy, part relief, and part sorrow. Then she exited, and the door clicked shut behind them. Evelina was left alone in the opulent suite. The half-finished champagne, the strawberries, the lit candles, everything seemed like a cruel reminder of the illusions that had consumed her life for the past year. She thought of chasing after Gregory, begging him to reconsider, but deep down she knew it was pointless. He had chosen his wife and his child, and even if he changed his mind tomorrow, what kind of foundation would they ever have? With trembling fingers, Evelina wiped her tears. She rose and walked to the window, gazing out at the vast cityscape. It struck her how many lives were unfolding below somewhere down there. Hearts were breaking, deals were being made, people were falling in love. Life went on, regardless of her personal tragedy. In the reflective glass, she caught sight of her own image. The black dress, the smoky eye makeup, the meticulously arranged hair, once symbols of seduction and desire, now felt like a costume for a part she no longer wished to play. She felt hollow, yet strangely wiser. There was no going back to who she was yesterday. That woman no longer existed. The hours that followed blurred for Evelina. She cried until her tears dried, paced the marble floors until her feet ached, and replayed every tender moment and empty promise Gregory had made. By morning's light, she felt a dull ache rather than acute pain. Maybe it was the numbness of acceptance. She knew her next steps wouldn't be easy. She would have to sort out her finances. Gregory had been giving her a monthly allowance. That would undoubtedly cease. She would also need to think about her living situation, her job prospects, how to rebuild her life without the illusions she'd clung to. But she was resolute in one thing. She refused to remain trapped in heartbreak. Shortly after sunrise, she slipped out of the penthouse. She left behind the luxurious suite and its memories, walking out with only her purse in hand. It was time to return to her small apartment, her realm of realness, and begin the process of healing. Across the city, in a grand estate behind wrought iron gates, Rebecca sat at her kitchen table, flipping through legal paperwork. Gregory was slumped in a chair, staring blankly at his coffee cup. Neither had slept. Their marriage was now irreversibly altered. The question wasn't just whether they could mend what had been broken, but whether they should. In the weeks that followed, Gregory attempted to atone for his actions. He cut off all contact with Evelina, shifting his focus to repairing his marriage and preparing for fatherhood. He showered Rebecca with gestures of love, planning a baby shower, attending every doctor's appointment, and publicly supporting her charitable work. But trust, once shattered, isn't easily rebuilt. Rebecca carried deep scars of betrayal. In quiet moments, she doubted whether Gregory truly had changed or was merely playing a new role. Evelina, meanwhile, wrestled with heartbreak and the realization that her dreams of living a fairy tale life with a rich, powerful man had been fueled by illusions. She found herself forced to redefine her ambitions. Day by day, she salvaged her pride, determined to carve out a path untainted by secrets. She took a job at a design firm, channeling her creativity into something real, something she could call her own. It wasn't easy. Memories of Gregory were as persistent as shadows, haunting her. But with each sunrise, she learned to let go bit by bit. Rumors eventually trickled through the city's gossip channels. Some suspected a rift in the Harrington marriage, but no damning evidence ever surfaced. No one, aside from a trusted few, knew the full extent of the secret affair and the penthouse confrontation that ended it all. In time, the city found new scandals to feast upon, new couples to idolize or revile. Yet, for the three lives entangled in this drama, Gregory, Rebecca, and Evelina, the scars remained. Their story served as a reminder that illusions, no matter how dazzling, cannot replace the bedrock of honesty. For Evelina, the lesson was the hardest and most necessary one of her life. True love cannot bloom in the dark soil of deception. And though her heart was bruised, it wasn't beyond hope. She would carry forward, stronger and more cautious, looking for the kind of love that could stand in the light of day, unafraid and unashamed. And there it is, a night of secrets, a promise of seduction, and a shocking twist that shattered hearts in a single, agonizing moment. As Evelina Costover discovered, chasing love built on broken vows can lead to heartbreak. Rebecca Harrington learned that trust, once lost, is nearly impossible to regain. Gregory, torn by his own making, was forced to choose a path under a microscope of regret. In the aftermath, each must confront the costs of love, deception, and the fragile hope of redemption. Will any of them find peace, or will the ghosts of this scandal haunt them forever? Only time will tell. If this story gripped your heart, made you gasp in shock, or reminded you of life's unpredictable turns, please show your support. Like this video, share it with someone who appreciates a juicy drama, and subscribe to our channel for more riveting tales. Your engagement helps us create and share even more stories.